Good day, folks. A little bit more on history, following up on what I did yesterday. I've explained to you how Tibet essentially was a play for the British to build a buffer against invading Russians. And unfortunately, at that time, most of our foreign policy was dictated by the British, having written our borders. I mean, what do you expect, right? Okay. So, having done that, just remember 62. We can all blame Nehru for it, but his intent was very clear. He was, even if he had a forward policy, though most people tell, including Major Dalvi, who became a prisoner of war on the Chinese side, said the preparations as far as all the other people that he met, the Chinese people who he interacted with, told him, the PLA including, that the preparations had started in 58. Mao really wanted to teach Nehru a lesson. The war was initiated by China on that ground, not the forward policy of Nehru as everybody's been led to believe. However, the point was, why did we have such a bad time? Because of the poor politico-military relationship, and just that's exactly what it was. And then they gave charge to this gentleman from general from Kaul, and I think he just blew this whole thing up, right? But let's go beyond that. What really? Just remember, 67. 67 is Nathula. Why is Nathula important? But before that, let's go to 1966. 1966, Indira Gandhi signed a defense pact with Bhutan, and that really rattled China. In 67, they decided to go after Sikkim. If you remember that, this was an independent kingdom. It was not part of India, right? There a lot of activity was happening. Message went back to India. They built a barbed wire. They put a barbed wire fence kind of thing between the borders. It's a very important border because in this part, India has a distinct geographical and military advantage against the invading PLA and the Chinese army, right? So they tried to bully India again. They tore down the barbed wire, built a kind of trenches, and message went from there that this is what was happening. Guess what Indira Gandhi said? Indira Gandhi said, "Khader do," and guess who was in charge? General Sagat Singh. In this, from fisticuffs it led to live ammunition firing. He got injured. This really got the Indians totally inside, and they went after. They fired back. And let me tell you, it's the truth that two Indians now say conservatively 250 Chinese were killed, but folklore has it that it may have been in 4 figures. And that's a possibility. So that was the first time the revenge for 62 was taken. So don't go over to 62. Let's go to 67. Now, let's go beyond that. Indira Gandhi, in 75, changed the band, surrounded the palace. Guess what she did? Did a vote in Sikkim. 97.5 people voted to 5% people voted to join in the Indian Union. We got the 22nd state. She changed the band. This really rattled the China. Then what happened, folks? Let's go down to 86, 87. Again, a lot of activity, Chinese activity. And what are the areas they were at? Namka Chu and Sundorong Chu. These are two little rivulets. Lots of activity. Message went back. General Sundarji was the chief. He was again given a carte blanche paper to work with. He asked for that. He needed reinforcements and he needed some kachars. Instead of kachars, the Indian Army, Rajiv Gandhi at the top, provided them with surprised the Chinese with heavy lifting airplanes that were from Russia. So not only did we do that, we moved for the first time T-72 tanks in Debchok. That shocked the Chinese. They moved away. They moved away without a bullet being fired. The biggest victory India's probably had against China. And then what did he do? He went down, converted Nifa into Arunachal Pradesh. That became annexed. These are victories of folklore. Not what's happening currently. Like we lose 20 soldiers in 2020 and everybody's still saying, hey, then nothing happened. Nobody's in our territory. We've given up our territory. And that, guys, is the God's own truth. And the reason why that's happening is this. LAC talks failed to reach consensus on key areas. Any surprise? And why that happens is because of this policy that is followed by the Chinese. Indian military planners often describe LAC as conforming to Chairman Mao's stratagem of tan, fight, talk. And clearly Beijing seeks to keep the LSE alive. China's new Central Military Commission saw big promotions awarded to 3 PLA generals who are key actors in the Western Theatre Command, which borders India. The command has been working specifically on limiting India's ability to conduct offensive operations. The difference between what China says and what China does has clear implications for India. First, while India may strive for mutual sensitivity, respect and interest, China continues to see India through a third-party prism. Two, the denial of Indian agency stems from long-standing disdain for parity with India. Disdain, remember that, right? Three, the aversion to parity translates to status dilemmas where China sees US-India cooperation not simply as a balance of power politics but also as a balance of status. Four, if Chinese actions along the LAC are driven by third-party prisms, then India and its partners need to shore up signaling both externally and internally. No matter what Beijing says, Quad has rattled the assumptions. Finally, on narratives, India put the facts on the ground first on Taiwan clash, not ceding ground for speculation. However, the bigger battle lies in thwarting Chinese attempts in painting Taiwan as a core interest which they want. Just remember, they wanted to in 1959. It was they wanted to trade off Aksai Chin for NIFA. India refused because you just can't trade anything with China because this one step back, two steps forward for China. As China asserts power, India needs to consider engaging with Taiwan. And he says, therefore, applying Act East policies 3 C's, commerce, culture, connectivity, and 3 T's of diplomacy, trade, technology, and tourism in its relations with Taiwan will accrue long-term dividends for India. Third, as India is acquiring a role of rule setter in the Indo-Pacific, it may have no option but to think of role in a Taiwan contingency. Therefore, including Taiwan in its Indo-Pacific version would serve India's interests better. As Xi begins his third term, we will witness a more assertive China that will continue the military intimidation of India and Taiwan, facing threats from a belligerent China and committed to safeguarding their sovereignty, strive to advance their bilateral ties. This is exactly what we should do. And in this process, what's happening is Xi meets Arab leaders at Milestone Summit. But here's what Mahathir Sachdev, right? In the Gulf, India must be clear alert to Chinese strategy. Moreover, unlike China, our growing profile has the advantage of mutual familiarity, incrementalism, and non-disruption. As the world's third largest, fastest growing oil importer and seventh largest investment destination, we are perhaps destined to compete with China in this vital region ever since the United States stepped out. Ready to support UAE in space sector, Mantri at Abu Dhabi meet. UAE to link India's SEPA with other pacts to help both the nations, says envoy. Jay Shankar discusses food security, trade with UAE counterpart. This is important. Food security cannot be provided by China. Focus of India-UAE talks, energy, food, and rupee dirham trade, and there is rupee real trade also on the guys. Okay, Xi seeks fresh diplomatic inroads at APEC summit, but India needs the following: India, France to set up group to study the war. India, Australia trade pact in force from December 29. India, Indonesia look to boost air connectivity, and Tata's boarding civil call Vistara to be merged into Air India. Remember, this is part Singapore airline is 25% part of APEC. Big play. UK delivering on new FTA with India. Golden era with China overseas. So now we have UK on our side. Trading to win. That's with the UK. Pacifist Japan unveils biggest military build-up since WW2. Japan unveils 320 billion military build-up plan. This, folks, is the important part. We have to be part of all these groupings. Japan, and this is a new one that's going to come up, is I think we should set up a pact with Japan as I've seen, I'll talk about tomorrow. But it is critical. These are the different tools to counter China, folks. 3 cheers and Jai Hind.